Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, we're going to be doing a Christmas book box. To create our Christmas book box, I have this piece that I found on a craft website. I will link it in the comments. It's made from MDF, and I'm also going to be using this mold that I found on AliExpress. I'm going to be pouring some resin for this piece, so I'm going to pour out equal parts A and B, and then I'm going to combine them and stir them really well. So this is very similar to the amazing casting resin. It sets in about 10 minutes, and I'm going to very carefully pour it into my mold using my silicone cup. Remember, you can find a full product list in the description below, and most of these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Next, I'm also going to be casting the lovely stag from the Jingle Mould. This was from Christmas last year, and I'm also going to cast a few baubles from the little mold that I have up the top there. I will link that mold in the description as well. So you just want to take your time when it comes to pouring the resin. You do only have a little bit of work time, but you definitely don't want to rush. Here, I rushed a little bit and I started to get a little bit of a spill. But if that happens, don't stress. Sometimes you can actually push that excess resin over into the mold nearby like I'm doing now, or you can wipe it up with a wet wipe. It's not the end of the world if it does go over the edge. You can also cut the excess resin off with a craft knife, but it is best if you just take your time. So now my molds are ready to come out. I'm going to flex the silicone mold around it and very carefully start pulling the resin casting out. And you can see if there's any little excess bits of resin, I just pull that off with my fingers. And same when it comes to these little baubles here, I'm going to pull them out, and then I can also take off any excess resin that has gone over the sides. As you're watching this, you might be thinking it's a little bit early for doing Christmas decor, but I want to do this project in an upcoming workshop, and I thought, why not do a video on it as well so that you guys can get inspired and maybe recreate something like it for yourself. Next, I'm going to take out that lovely stag from the Jingle Mould, and you always need to go really slowly here just to make sure you don't accidentally tear his antlers. Now my resin castings are ready, I can focus on my book box. So I'm going to give the surface 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm going to paint the outside first. So I'm painting the outside. I'm also going to be painting the spine of the book as well. There are some hinges on the side that I'm going to paint straight over the top of. I don't want to draw any attention to those. And I am, of course, going to paint the back. I'm not going to do anything to the inside just yet. When my 2 coats of paint are completely dry, I'm going to be using JRV's Grain Sack Stripe Stencil. I'm also using a 1/2 inch JRV stencil brush, and I'm just holding my stencil in place, and then you can see I'm running my stencil brush along the stencil. I don't do any dabbing or stippling for this particular stencil. I find if I press down and pull my brush up the stencil, I tend to get a cleaner line. I know some people have had some issues using this one. I really do recommend that you hold it steady and, as I said, just run that brush along the edge of the stencil as opposed to dabbing and stippling, which could cause the thin lines in the center to move. I'm using Dixie Belle's Barn Red for my color today, and when I'm finished, I'll pull the stencil straight up. To give this a slightly distressed look, I'm using some 220 grit sandpaper on my stencil here after it has completely dried, and then I'm using a paper towel to remove any of my sanding dust. Next, I'm going to have a play with how I'm going to position my casting. So you can see I've got my frame there. I want to put my stag in the center on top of the lovely frame. I am considering putting that label down the bottom. And now these are some castings that I bought of the Boughs of Holly mold. I don't have this mold, so I had to buy castings for this. So I'm going to paint the castings first here from the Boughs of Holly mold in Dixie Belle's Juniper Chalk Mineral Paint. paint, and I'm going to be using a smaller brush here so that I can get down into all of the details, and I'm going to paint both of these in that juniper colour. Last year IOD came out with Holly Lane, which had some holly and a pine cone, so if you don't have access to the Boughs of Holly mould, you could use that instead. Next I'm going to use Dixie Belle's Chocolate Chalk Mineral Paint to paint my little pine cones. I'm then going to use juniper on some of the greenery that's on this lovely frame casting, and I'm just using a small artist brush just to get the green on those spots. You can see there's some lovely leaves or laurels in those sections. Once I have both sides of the greenery painted, I am now using Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic paint, and I'm going to paint all the other areas on this frame casting. And I'm just using another small artist brush so that I can get into all of the details. And really it's only going to take, I would say, about 1.5 coats. So my second coat will just be a bit of a touch-up coat because this is so highly pigmented. I do have this available for pre-order on my website, and it will be in stock then from the end of September. Very excited to have this beautiful metallic in store. If you don't have access to this particular paint, there is also Dixie Belle's Gilding Wax. It comes in bronze and gold as well. That could definitely be a suitable alternative. Using what's left on my brush, I'm going to hit the high points of our leaves that we painted before. I'm just wanting a subtle hint of bronze in these sections. I'm then also going to be painting the stag from the Jingle Mould in that same bronze paint. I'm then also going to add the same bronze to our lovely little bauble ornaments. While my castings are drying, I'm going to focus on my book again, and I'm going to use some of Paint Couture's Crackle Medium. I'm putting down step 1 and I'm putting on a bit of a thin coat here. This is going to go on the front and the side and the back, so this is step 1. Once that's ready, it will feel tacky and I can come in with step 2. And again, I'm not going on super thick with this product, and then I need to let it dry. Once my crackle step 2 is completely dry, I'm going to be using some of Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to be applying it and then wiping back some of the excess with a wet wipe. I did a similar look in a previous video where I was introducing these products, and this is definitely a favorite. You could water down the glaze if it's too dark, but I definitely like to be able to create layers and a variation in tone, so I have applied it heavy, but you can see it is quite easily wiping away with that wet wipe. I'll also be adding that same glaze to the spine of the book and the back. Now I'm ready, once my glaze is dry, to attach my casting. So I'm just going to position them in place where I want them to go, and then I'm going to be using Gorilla Super Glue Gel to attach them to the book itself. When it was time to add the little pine cones, I used my heat gun to heat up the resin so that it would become flexible. I'm then adding some glue and then pressing it over the top of the greenery that we have already glued down. And heating it up allows me to get a better contact. It allows me to manipulate it. So it's definitely a good idea to do that to your castings if you're wanting to really mold them to a particular shape. I'm then going to attach the frame casting. So again, just adding that super glue. If you don't have super glue, you could definitely use a wood glue or a hot glue. To attach the little stag, I'm actually going to position it where I want it to go, and then with that in mind, I'm going to actually apply the glue to the frame itself. I thought about adding it to the deer, but I felt like this was a little bit of a better idea because then I'd know exactly where to add the glue. I'm using the same glue to attach my little baubles. I'm going to have one hanging off the greenery on each side, and then I'm going to stagger their journey down the book box so that it looks like they're sort of hung on different levels. And if you're going to try this at home, this would be something that you would just arrange to your liking. The Jingle Mould does have some very sweet little bells that I probably could have used, but I didn't feel like the scale was quite right for my project, so that's why we went with a different type of mould today. I'm then going to use the end of my paintbrush. I'm dipping it into my bronze paint, and then I'm dabbing it onto my surface to create the little chain or string, whatever you want to call it, that our little baubles are hanging from. And I'm just doing little dots, one over the top of the other. And on a couple of them, I'm not going to have the string go all the way up. And again, this is just going to be to your liking if you want to add these or not. I'm then going to use a little bit of that bronze paint on the edges and details of the pine cones up the top and the greenery. I wanted to add a little bit of text down the bottom of the book, so I'm using IOD's Merry and Bright stamp. This was from 2 years ago, I believe. I've pulled off some text from that design. I've put it on a thin mat. Now I'm using IOD's permanent black ink, and then I'm going to line up my stamp and then carefully press down. Always have one hand holding it in place while you move your fingers around to press down. And now I need to focus on the spine, so I'm actually going to take the words Merry Christmas from the Merry and Bright stamp. I have them on a thin mount, and I'm repeating the same process as before, adding some of that ink and then pressing down. I then took another stamp from that same set and I'm inking it up, but then I'm going to use a wet wipe to wipe off some of the design so that we can fit this underneath the Merry Christmas that we just stamped. So I've inked it up, I'm wiping away the excess, and then I'm going to press down with my stamp. I'm also going to add the two little deers from the stamp. They're small enough that they're going to be able to fit, so I'm going to do them one at a time. And on the one for the right hand section, I did end up having to wipe off some of the antler because it did overlap a little bit with our text Merry Christmas, but that's the beauty of these stamps. You can use bits and pieces of the design. Now I'm going to use another part of a stamp for the spine of the book as well. So you can see I'm just inking up part of the design, and then I'm going to turn our book box on the side and I'm going to use part of it down the bottom and then repeat the same process and use the same section up the top. On the back of the book, I kept it pretty simple and inked up just one of the designs to go in the center. In the section where it's meant to be book pages, I'm going to use some of that bronze paint. I felt like this was perfect, that it would look like some of those old books that has the gold on the pages that you see in a lot of old libraries. So I'm going to add that bronze paint to the entire middle section. I just feel like this is a really nice pop of color, and it definitely goes with the look we're trying to create. Moving to the inside of our book box, I decided that I would put down 2 coats of Dixie Belle's drop cloth chalk mineral paint. Originally, I also went around the edges here, as you can see, with that white paint. In the end, I do decide to go back and add some of that bronze paint instead. But I kept it pretty simple in here. I'm just going to go through that merry and bright stamp, and I'm going to spell out the phrase "good tidings of comfort and cheer." I think this is a lovely sentiment. Again, if you don't have this stamp set, you could definitely use IOD's letterpress stamp set, or perhaps some stencils to spell out whatever phrase you want. You could use decoupage paper. It really is up to you and what you want to create. Again, the front of my book is pretty elaborate, so I just wanted to keep it a little bit simple. Now I'm pressing down some plastic over the top of the stamps, and I'm then going to use some of IOD's permanent black ink, and then I'm going to position it where I want it to go and carefully press down. To add a little detail above our text, I'm going to use IOD's knob topper stamp. This is another older one. I'm going to put it in the center, but I've also used some of the flourishes from the Reverie stamp. So again, I've positioned my molds where I want them. I'm pressing down some plastic to pick them up and keep that particular formation. And then I'm going to use some more of my black ink and then carefully position it where I want it to go and press down. This is pretty repetitive, but the stamps are so beautiful, and it's a really easy way to create a beautiful design. Down the bottom, I'm going to use the larger deer from the Merry and Bright stamp and the same design that I used on our spine under the text, and I'm just going to position that down the bottom under our writing. I'm now going to use a small artist brush to go around the edges of the book to make sure that we have that bronze paint all around the outside. And as I said previously, I'm going to come in now with some more of that bronze paint and go around the edges of the inside of our book box. And here's our finished Christmas book box. I love how this turned out. I feel like those molds, the stamps, the stencils, and that beautiful metallic paint worked really well together. I think this would look lovely in anyone's home, or I think it would make a lovely gift. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used in today's video on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.